Well, hey there guys, I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shot, the ZeldaDungeon.net video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. Our first question comes from Hugo the Kokiri. Is there a connection between Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time? Yes. The Ash Girl asks, there are debates on whether Midna wears clothes or not, but in the end of the game she's wearing clothing. Do you think she was naked as an imp? Can you confirm this for us? Well, I can't confirm it necessarily because I'm not Nintendo. Yeah, technically, strictly speaking, she was kind of naked in her imp form, but there's a difference between being clothed and being decent. I mean, there's no arguing that Midna's character design as the imp was pretty much decent. I mean, you can wear clothes and not be decent, but as evidenced by, like, I don't know, every werewolf character or most non-human characters from things, you can also technically be completely naked and it not be a problem. Clearly there was no problem with Midna's appearance, and, you know, people theorize that those Twilight wear shadows, but it didn't seem like she wore clothing, and it doesn't really matter. She was decent, and it's not really an issue. It's not worth a major discussion, Midna's clothing. Is she naked or not? It just seems slightly creepy, kind of like the Link's pants discussion about Skyward Sword. Elven Knight asks, are the spiritual stones in Ocarina of Time and the Pendants in A Link to the Past the same? We don't really know for sure. There's nothing that really suggests either way, I guess. But, speaking, from just like a logical perspective of the fact that they basically do exactly the same thing, in every way that really matters, they are the exact same thing. Because they do the same thing, they have the same themes, you know, it's just like, if they are the exact same object or not in terms of, like, the storyline details, it's a kind of a moot point because they're just so identical. I mean, you could just go and say that, you know, they just decide to stick the spiritual stones into pendants. I mean, that's what most pendants are anyway. I mean, the pearls from, like, the Wind Waker, they're pretty similar too, though they are more different. And, you know, it's the same thing. It's a reusing the same basic idea. You could claim that they're the same thing, you could claim they're unrelated, just the same idea. You know, it doesn't really matter. It's the same concept. That's what's important. Coco Risa asks, the Zelda timeline theory is split into two groups, the splitists and the linearists. So which one are you, splitist or linearist? Linearist, excuse me. I'm actually a bit of both. It's kind of an odd story. I think I've talked about this on previous mailbags a bit, but I'll go over it again. Basically, I believe that Nintendo in no way intended a split timeline when they made Ocarina of Time. I think there's a perfectly logical explanation for it being a linear storyline, and I think it's the most basic explanation and kind of like just goes without saying. And I think, in my opinion, that fans like started coming up with the timeline theories and it became a popular theory, so Nintendo decided to go with it. They decided to confirm it as canon when it wasn't their original intention. It was kind of like they decided it later. And they did confirm that it is a split timeline. That's just a fact at this point. You can't believe that it isn't a split timeline unless you don't believe Nintendo's own words, which isn't necessarily an invalid opinion. But point is that I believe that that's what they intend now. It's not what they intended back then. So I'm a bit of both. Hylian6889 asks, what part of any Zelda game scared the heck out of you? This is actually kind of a funny story for me, because I was never scared by things like the Re-Deads or the Shadow Temple. I mean, they're creepy, but they never scared me. What actually scared me was only one time in the Zelda series have I been scared, and that was a while back when I played a Majora's Mask. And believe it or not, you're not going to expect what I'm going to say. It was the Great Bay, when you went to Pinnacle Rock, I think it was called, and you dove down into the pit underwater, kind of partway out into the sea, and fought the sea snakes. I've always been sort of, like, creeped out and terrified of the idea of deep sea, like, isolation, claustrophobia stuff. Either being underwater inside something, or just being trapped out in the water. I don't know if that may stem from the fact that I actually did, potentially at least, possibly almost drown as a child. I don't know. But it's always creeped me out, and as such, that moment in the game really creeped me out. And it still gives me kind of like this, God, I really don't like this part of the game kind of feeling, you know? But other than that, the Zelda series hasn't really scared me. It's just that one thing that sort of brayed off a personal fear of mine, which is kind of funny because it wasn't intended to really be scary at all. It didn't help that I actually did that part at night in the game, because it was night in the game, so it was all dark and creepy, and there's like these creepy faces going. I'm sure you don't want to see another impression of another freaky enemy, but yeah, basically, that's my scary moment. I would love to hear your guys' scariest moments in the Zelda series, if it's anything interesting like mine, or if it's the more intentionally scary stuff. Little Deku Tree asks, what do you think about Link never having parents, not even mentioned in the games? Do you think they'll drop that tradition, or will Link stay an orphan in future games? I've always thought that this was sort of a part of them trying to make Link just like a blank slate that the player can relate to and, you know, it be them in the game. Because I always felt that, well, they always give him a story and background. The way that he's never, like, too directly related to anyone that's in the game kind of allows you to kind of put yourself in there. He always has, like, more distant relatives. The sister in The Wind Waker is one of the closest things he ever had. And they have actually referenced, or at least had, like, possible references to his parents in other games, but they've never showed them. As for if they'll continue or not, it depends if they want to keep up that trend, or if they want to connect him more to the games and such. I mean, having a father figure like Russell in Twilight Princess isn't so much different from having an actual father, so who knows? It'd be interesting to see what Nintendo wants to do with that, and I think that they could keep it up with the blank slate player relating to the character kind of thing a bit more in future games, even if they do give Link more of a character. I mean, he has a character, he has a background, doesn't mean that he can't be kind of open enough that you can still apply yourself to him. King of Red Lions asks, is Dark Link actually Link's shadow or just an illusion? Well, I wouldn't say he's just an illusion. I mean, he can stab you. I mean, if he can stab you and it hurts you, and it's not like as soon as the battle ends, it's like nothing happened, then I'd say that he's real. I mean, you could have something that doesn't actually exist and it still be kind of like real in the sense that it's an illusion that comes to life, I guess. Bottom line is, I think that in Ocarina of Time, it seemed like he was your reflection come to life, which is sort of like a thing that they do with some Japanese stuff, I think, and that's probably why he was in the water temple, you know, water reflections and stuff like that. I think it's probably he is some kind of illusion or, like, fake entity made out of Link. He's not exactly like his own creature, but he is real in a sort of fake sort of way, if that makes any sense. That's always how I've interpreted it. It's kind of this abstract way of existing, kind of. Zelda is the best asks, in Ocarina of Time we fight Volvagia, and we find out that he was revived by Ganondorf. Do you think we will see him in the Megaton Hammer and Skyward Sword, and do you think the Gorons will be in that game? Well, granted that we're seeing, like, its story before Ocarina of Time, in my opinion at least, someone like the creation stuff of Hyrule, I think that seeing the Gorons, or at least something about them being explained, is sort of necessary. I talked last Mailbag about entities like the Deku Tree or Lord Jabu Jabu appearing in the game just because of just that nature of it being this origin story, these big deities or whatever that are important to the story, kind of, if they got explained, that would make sense. Granted, that, I mean, even though Volvagia is an enemy, he still sort of is that version, Goron's version of that entity. So I would think it'd be cool to see him again, and that is like this old story of the, you know, of Ocarina of Time that could easily come to play in Skyward Sword. I can't say for sure if it will, but it seems like it would fall into place. It just depends on if Nintendo wants to, like, connect, you know, old lore and stuff like that much, or if they're just gonna do something kind of just brand new and not really talk much about, like, old stuff that they've referenced in other games. Gurnzim123 asks, I wanted to know, do you think that Ganondorf is reincarnated like Link and Zelda? No, I don't. I definitely believe that Nintendo didn't intend for this, because in Ocarina of Time, which is basically the first game on the timeline, or at least last Nintendo confirmed it was, and it was kind of intended to be an origin story, it explained that once Ganondorf was sealed in the Sacred Realm, he would emerge to, like, wreak his revenge on Link and Zelda's descendants, essentially confirming that he comes back to avenge his prior defeat against the new descendants of Link and Zelda, or their reincarnations, or whatever, you know, things like that. And while people have speculated that there are multiple Ganons, I don't think anyone has ever supported the idea that he is actually reincarnated. Except maybe that there's an entity possessing Ganon, which I don't generally believe, but might be possible. Like, there's this demon that possesses multiple Ganons or something, and that's the real Ganon or whatever. I don't know, kind of an odd idea, but I generally believe it's the same Ganon who's basically immortal, through one way or another. Alright guys, that's it for this time. Be sure to send your questions to the contact page down in the description, or possibly up there. But, and I'll see you guys later. Yeah, they kind of are, because they have the exact same purpose. I mean, you could go as... I mean, they serve the exact same